Hey, come on. Wait. All right, good vach. Tonight is the Hilula of the Baba Sali. I'm going to share with you a few stories of the Baba Sali, and I also want to share with you at least part of the story of Rashbatz. Hopefully, God willing, it's a very, very long story. I'll share part of it tonight, and hopefully we'll continue with this in the coming weeks. The Baba Sali had a very, very deep relationship with our Rebbe. Of course, we're talking about two tzaddikim which are beyond our understanding. So whatever we know doesn't really portray the real bond between the souls of these tzaddikim. On the other hand, these stories are really, really incredible. Here's the first story. I heard this story from Chaki Abusera, Meir Abusera's son, who heard the story from his father. Rabbi Abusera was very popular he was in newspaper covers and magazine covers because of his work in let me turn off the sound over here 1 second. Because of his work in health foods, he became very, very popular. He was living in New York, and he was married with 2 children at the time. And he wanted to move to Israel. He and his wife had always wanted to move to Israel, and he mentioned to a friend of his that he wants to ask for a bracha from tzaddik before he moves to Israel, because his family came from Morocco. They're familiar with tzaddikim, and before you make such a big move, you go to a tzaddik and you ask for a blessing. So his friend said to him, well, in New York, we have this great tzaddik, the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Why don't you go to the Rebbe and ask the Rebbe for a bracha? So he didn't really think that was a good idea, because he knew that the real tzaddikim were in Israel, the real tzaddikim were in Morocco. Why would he go to the Rebbe who's in New York? There can't be tzaddikim in New York. But a few months pass, and the same conversation comes up, and his friend says to him, no, so you should go to the Rebbe. So he listened to his friend, and he saw the Rebbe. And he was very, very touched by this, just seeing the Rebbe. He realized that indeed there are tzaddikim in New York. And he asked the Rebbe for a blessing to move to Israel. And the Rebbe said to him that you're doing a lot of work with young people. He didn't tell us the Rebbe knew. The Ruach HaKodesh, divine inspiration. You're doing a lot of work with young people. Come guys, join us. Doing a lot of work with young people, so you should stay. And if you'll stay, you'll do a lot more. So he told the Rebbe that yes, he's doing work with young people, but this is his life's dream. He always wanted to move to Israel. So the Rebbe said, "Do you think that is not my life's dream as well? I also want to move to Israel, but nevertheless, there's stuff that has to get done over here, and you're doing amazing things. You should continue staying here." So he was very upset because he just wanted to get this blessing to go, and instead of giving him a blessing, he told him that he should stay, and he was really upset. But he knew that he has another way of getting a blessing from a tzaddik to go to Israel. He will just ask his father to ask the Baba Sali, his great uncle. So his father called up the Baba Sali, and the Baba Sali said, the mayor's father called the Baba Sali, and the Baba Sali said, isn't mayor in New York? He said, yes. So if he's in New York, he should stay in New York, and he should become a chassid of the Rebbe. That's what the Baba Sali said. He should stay in New York, and he should become a chassid of the Rebbe. Now already the Baba Sali wasn't told what the Rebbe had said. He's in New York, he should stay in New York, and be a chassid of the Rebbe. And that's what happened. He stayed in New York. He went to Rebbe the first time for farbrengen on Purim, and that farbrengen really transformed him. He became the Rebbe's whistler. Every farbrengen, he was the one who would whistle. Rebbe asked for whistling to accompany the singing. It was a mayor who began the whistling. He had a very, very unique connection with our Rebbe. Anyway, so I want to share with you one more story of the Baba Sali. This story was shared on the GEM videos by the Baba Sali's daughter's husband, the Machluf Crispin. Machluf shared the story of how the Baba Sali moved from Yavne to Ashkelon. The Baba Sali was often visited by shluchim of the Rebbe. Guys, you said you're coming. Come on. I'm waiting. No, come. Baba Sali was often visited by shluchim of the Rebbe, including Rabbi Shalom Matasov, and that was very special for the Baba Sali to have this regards from the Rebbe. And the Baba Sali actually wanted to move to New York himself in 1952. There's a letter printed in the Rebbe's letters where the Baba Sali asks the Rebbe if he should move to New York. And the Rebbe says to him in this letter, Rebbe writes a lot of language of Kabbalah, that he has a role to play to inspire Sephardic Jewry, and he can only do this successfully in the best way in Israel, and therefore he should stay in Israel. He should not move to New York. That happened in 1952. So throughout the time the Baba Sali is in in Israel, he kept a very close bond with Rebbe. So this Harav Machluf, the Baba Sali's granddaughter's husband, he was involved in the rabbinate in Yavne, and the rabbi asked Rabbi Machluf if he could introduce him to the Baba Sali. Now the Baba Sali's path in serving Hashem was with holy fire. That means it wasn't always peaches and cream. So this man asked the Baba Sali, he says, can you please introduce me to Baba Sali? I want to get a blessing from him, I want to get advice from him. Can you please bring me in? He didn't really know the guy, but he asked to see the Baba Sali. Your family, bring me in. So he brings him in. And he leaves, they're talking together, and he walks out. When he comes back, he realized he made a mistake because Baba Sali was furious. Baba Sali was so upset. What happened? This guy was a grandson, his ancestor was a Vilna Gaon, and he told Baba Sali that the Vilna Gaon was, of course, a great Torah scholar. He's very proud to be a descendant of the great Vilna Gaon. And he made some disparaging remark about the Baal Shem Tov. What exactly he said, he doesn't know, because he wasn't there for that part of the conversation. He just heard the next part of the conversation, where the Baba Sali starts speaking to him very forcefully and angrily. He says to him, you coming here to tell me about the Vilna Gaon? You're coming here to tell me about the Baal Shem Tov? How dare you speak like this against the Baal Shem Tov? Get up and get out. And the guy's like, well, the Vilna Gaon was very special, and he was a great genius. You're telling me about the Vilna Gaon? You're telling me about the Baal Shem Tov? Get up and out. I don't want people speak like this about the Baal Shem Tov in my presence. Well, so the guy gets up and gets out. The Baba Sali is very upset, and Machluf, he apologizes to the Baba Sali. Baba Sali says, what did you do? How did you bring someone like this to me? Why would you do this to me? And he said, I didn't know the guy. He just asked. I told you I didn't know him. So Baba Sali continues. And Baba Sali says, what does this guy do? He says he has a kollel in Yavne. In those days, when the story took place, I don't remember the year the story took place, in those days there were very few kollels in Yavne. So Baba Sali said, if there is a kollel tomorrow in Yavne, this man, my name is not Baba Sali. If the kollel still exists tomorrow, he said to Baba Sali, he says, whoa, it's great that we have a kollel here because this is special. We have the voice of Torah in Yavne. Why would you want this to stop? Baba Sali said there'll be another kollel, will be better kollel, but this cannot continue. There cannot be this speech against the Baal Shem Tov. The very next day, the kollel was closed. The city council had allocated funds for the kollel. The very next day, they told the rabbi and the students to move out. They should find another place to go. Then the funds are dried up. They're not giving them any more funds. They were out the very next day, as Baba Sali had said. And not only that, the Baba Sali himself moved, because of the story, he moved from Yavne to Ashkelon because he did not want to be around people who said things against the Baal Shem Tov. So in that spirit, I want to share with you one of the most fascinating stories. of a man called Rabbi Shmuel Bezalel Sheftel. Rabbi Shmuel Bezalel, he was the teacher of 3 Rebbes. He taught the Rebbe Marash, the Rebbe Rashab, and he was a Malamed of 3 Rebbes. This is a story of how he became connected to chassidus. Shmuel Bezalel, his father spent all his time studying Torah in the Beis Medrash. He wasn't from a Hasidic family at all, but he was very careful not to say Lashon Hara, and therefore he never heard in his father's house anything negative about Hasidim. But his father died very young, when he was very young. His father died before he turned 50 years old. And his mother remarried someone, an uncle of his, and the uncle was apparently a bit wary that that the boy who was born from the previous marriage would mess up he was a young boy, he was like 9-10 years old, but he was very wary that this boy is going to mess stuff up, and therefore he told his wife as a prenuptial agreement that the boy is not allowed to be in the house. He has to sleep in the shul, can only come home from mealtime, and she didn't really have a choice, and that's what happened. He went to the shul and he studied Torah. But after a while, this uncle realized that his mother's husband realized this guy's not so bad. The boy's not so bad. He's not going to cause any trouble, and he let the boy still sleep in the house. And his stepfather, Rashbatz's stepfather, Shmuel Bezalel's stepfather, saw that the Rashbatz is a special boy, and he arranged that the rabbi of the town would teach him Torah. The rabbi of the town, his name was Rav Hirsch, and for 4 years. He arranged other chavrusas, other study partners for Shmuel Bezalel. When he was 15 years old, he and Rav Hirsch started studying together the Gemara of Bava Kama, Bava Metzia, Bava Basra, Masechta Shabbos. They finished all 4 Masechtas, they're all huge Masechtas. They finished them all in a year and a half. This tells you what kind of genius the Rashbatz must have been to finish so much Gemara at the age of 15. 4 huge tractates of Gemara, and not just to study them, like just daf yomi, but to go really, really in depth. Anyways, so one time they lived in a city called Shvinsyan. The city of Shvinsyan had about 30 chassidim. This was the time of Tzemach Tzedek. At that time, there were 30 chassidim that lived there, 30 chassidic families that lived there. And he happened to pass by their shul in Mincha and Ma'ariv. And he stopped to look at them, just to observe them. And one of the chassidim said to him, if you're nursing the milk, he said to him very strongly, he wasn't angry, but he said to him very strongly, and he could tell the guy meant what he said. He said, if you're nursing the milk of the misnagdim, you will never be a chassid. And leave, you can't be here. You can't stay here. You have to understand what was going on. There was a lot of violence that came from the misnagdim, those who opposed Hasidim to the Hasidim at that time. There was a lot of violence. So having one of their mortal enemies, a son of one of their mortal enemies in their presence wasn't a very safe thing to have for the Hasidim. But the Rashbatz was troubled. He was very upset by what the Chassid said to him. He really had a lot of respect for the Hasidim. He noticed 2 character traits that the Hasidim had that made him think that there must be something good about them. The 2 character traits he noticed were, number 1, was they always respected each other. They always showed a lot of respect to each other. No one tried to like be the leader and like to be arrogantly above everybody else. They all were very respectful and they all were humble. A second character trait he noticed, this is all, by the way, this what I'm sharing with you is printed in Atamim. It's officially written by one of the students of Tomchei Tmimim, but it's pretty clear that the true author of this is the previous Rebbe. Anyways, a second character trait he noticed was that whatever they're doing, they always are attached to Hashem. Whatever they were doing, they always were very attached to Hashem. For example, he noticed that Rabbi Yitzchak the tailor, while he was sewing clothing, he was always reviewing words of Torah by heart while he was sewing clothing. So he saw the Hasidim have these 2 phenomenal character traits. Another third thing he saw was that although they weren't very wealthy at all, these Hasidim, they were very meticulous about mitzvahs. They were very God-fearing. The Alter Rebbe introduced this slaughtering knife that wasn't common, that wasn't used before. Now everyone uses it. Today, the whole world uses it. But at the time, it was a novelty. The Alter said that they should use steel instead of iron to slaughter animals, and they should because it's much easier to steel than iron. It's easier to sharpen the knife, and the Gulul Chassidim were very poor. They got together and they hired a sheikhet. So you saw they were God-fearing people. On the other hand, he saw a lot of character flaws in the opponents of in the detractors and the opponents of Chassidim. He remembers how he saw how his teacher Rav Hirsch was very arrogant. He saw the members at one time he was studying with Rav Hirsch. They were studying Tractate Bava Kama, and Rav Hirsch said that his explanation of the Gemara is better than Rashi's. Rashi didn't understand the Gemara. Tosfos misses the point, and he decided after this comment that this chassid had said that you will never be a chassid because of the milk that you're nursing for the Misnagdim. He decided that their integrity, he was questioning their integrity after hearing that. And he wanted to better understand the Chassidim and their opponents to know who really was serving Hashem in the proper way. He wanted to understand this. So he felt in his heart that there was something Chassidim had that was special. But on the other hand, he was deathly afraid because the word in the street was that the Chassidim were heretics. And he didn't want to do that. He didn't want it to go down the wrong path. But on the other hand, he felt that there's something special about them. So he went one time to their minyan. He didn't get thrown out. So he stayed outside and he was listening outside the door to how they're davening. And they're up to the part of davening before Baruch Shamar. Before Yishtabach Lacha Hashem Agdul, to you Hashem's greatness. And he hears how they're pouring their hearts out. And there's such emotion. And he saw the Chassidim, when they were praying, they were totally oblivious to their surroundings. They didn't know where they were. They're just engrossed in their davening. And now the Chazan was like beating his forehead. He saw such concentration, saying these words, Hashem Agdullah. And even though he didn't want to come into the synagogue because he didn't want to get thrown out, but he was so overcome with curiosity, he had to walk in the synagogue. And he walks in and he sees what they're doing, he sees how they're davening, and he's really impressed. And he stayed, he's watching them, and he saw that the climax of their prayers was when they said the blessings before Shema. That blessings before Shema, they got really into it. And after he left early, because he didn't want people to find out where he had been, so he left early, and from that day on, his prayers were changed. He started to concentrate more on his prayers, and he started to notice the difference between the way the Chassidim prayed and the way their detractors prayed. He noticed that and it bothered him. He saw that the detractors, the Misnagdim, the opponents of Chassidim would pray very quickly, and even those who were considered to be like the most important members of the community, they would walk into synagogue late, and they would skip and just join the minyan wherever they were up to, and they wouldn't say the words audibly, they wouldn't say the words correctly, and therefore he decided he wants to investigate more about the opponents of Chassidim to see what they're about. And the subject of his investigation was his teacher of Hirsch. That was the main focus of his investigation. He thought a lot about his teacher of Hirsch. Hirsch said about himself, he saw that he had a lot of arrogance. He said about himself that he is like one of the Rishonim, one of the earliest commentators on the Torah, the Rambam, Rashi, and the Rif, and the Ritva. He said about himself that he is like one of the Rishonim. He is like one of the earliest sages of the Jewish people, the true tzaddikim, the true go'im, the true geniuses. And he has no need to study any of the works of Torah that were published by the later Torah giants from the time of the 1600s and on, because he is equal to Rashi and the Rambam. He said about himself, Rav Hirsch, that he could swim through the river of the Rambam with one stroke. He said that the rulings of Tosfos and the Rosh, he's so familiar with them like his two eyes. He said that the Gemara and the Tosfos for him is like a cushion for his head. He said that the Sifra and the Yerushalmi and the Rambam are like pillows under his sides. And is it for naught, said Rav Hirsch, that I've studied for 30 years for 18 hours a day Clearly, I am one of the Rishonim. I am equal to Rashi and Ram. That's how arrogant he was. His prayers, even on Yontiv, even on holidays, didn't last more than a half an hour. And then when he prayed, it was a big burden for him to pray. He wanted to get it over with. And he and Rashbatz would study together. And despite the fact that Rashbatz was bothered by the way he prayed, he still would study with him all day. They studied day and night, they studied together. And Rav Hirsch really enjoyed studying with Rashbatz. Rashbatz was a very gifted student. He really enjoyed studying with him. And he once asked his teacher, why is it that you are so quick with your prayers? And so Rav Hirsch said, well, prayer is really only meant for the great ones, the Jewish people. So he said, well, Rav Hirsch, you are like a prince of Israel. You are so great. Isn't something that you should focus on? So he said, no, that's only for only the Kat. The Kat was the title that the opponents of Chassidim gave to the Chassidim. They called them the sect. Those charlatans whose ways border on heresy, they act in a very weird way. They're into prayer, but that's not really for in Torah study. I'm more like one of the great ones of Israel, but prayer is not my thing. And so Rashbatz said to him, he saw this opportune time to talk to him about this, and he was wondering about this. So he asked him, have you ever really investigated the path of the Chassidim? Or is what you're telling me about them just something you've heard from one person who was just passing to someone else without your own personal observance of this? Is it possible that if you look into their ways, you would discover that they're not really heretics? And if they were, maybe their ways have changed. Have you really looked into this? And so Rav Hirsch saw that this boy is so innocent. He thought that this was the first time he was asking these questions. He didn't realize that Rashbatz's questions were well-founded based upon his own research, and he really wanted to hear the other side's perspective. And so he just started he has this mitzvah now to share with Rashbatz about the ways of the Misnag, the ways of the Chassidim. And he told Rashbatz that actually I have heard from very, very reliable sources all kinds of stories about the Chassidim. And he starts telling him all of these crazy stories about the Chassidim, which he has heard from very reliable sources. And he even told Rashbatz that the one who informed on the Alter Rebbe, who because of him, the Alter Rebbe went to prison, that I went to have lunch with him. And Rashbatz was very curious. I said, please tell me about this guy. So he told Rashbatz about this man, and he called the man who informed on the Alter Rebbe, and anyone who was opposed Chassidim, he called him a goyin, a genius, a tzaddik. And Rashbatz said, 1 second, how are you calling him a genius and a tzaddik? Doesn't the Torah say you're not allowed to? Doesn't it say in the Torah that you're not allowed to inform on a person, on a Jew, and to the authorities? Doesn't it say you're not allowed to tell the authorities about someone and inform on a Jew to the government? So Rashbatz said, yes, in general. I mean, the Rav Hirsch said that in general that's true. However, the Vilna Gaon's top student has said in this scenario that's okay, and therefore this was absolutely a mitzvah for this person to tell the government about the Alter Rebbe, to inform the government about the Alter Rebbe, and that's the story for Rashbatz was a real revelation, because he realized that all the stories that the Misnagdim are saying about the Chassidim are really unfounded, and that the Chassidim could easily disprove all the accusations they're making against them. They're really, really ridiculous. And he decided he wants to learn a lot more. He wants to learn more about the Chassidim. But he decided he's going to go see what they're learning. He's going to go see what they're learning, and he'll come and see what they're learning, and then he'll see for himself if they are indeed heretics as people are saying or not. But he didn't want to get thrown out. So he figured the best way not to get thrown out is he'll tell one of the Chassidim before he goes to visit their shul what he wants to do, and maybe that guy will bring him in. He'll be able to see firsthand what they're studying. So the Chassid listened to him, and he said to him, I don't think it's a good idea for you to join us. I will share with you our history, and you'll decide what you want. I'll talk to you one-on-one. And he told him, first there was the Jew named Baal Shem Tov. He was at first a hidden tzaddik. No one knew about him. Then he revealed then he started to perform miracles and wonders and shared his inner dimension of Torah. And he was succeeded by his Mishnah Maggid. And after Maggid passed away, the Mendel of Haradach succeeded him. And now the Alter Rebbe succeeded the Mendel of Haradach. He started telling the whole history of the Chassidim. And then the Rashbatz was very interested. And he finally invited him to join the Chassidim to study between Mincha and Ma'ariv, to study the Tanya. And he was very interested in studying the Tanya. I think I've shared a lot. There's already 27 minutes going in. Mr. Hashem will continue the story of the Rashbatz next time. And right now, let's watch the video of the Living Torah. Nachman, can put on the video?
America counts on CBS News. Rumor had it he was now in the building. And so we are
it was 30 years that I was in the CS.
waiting for his
My father was involved with the media, calling the press and get their message out, etc. And before farbrengen, we try to call the local media and the local the television stations and the New York Times and the newspapers, etc.
And so we are soldiers.
In this case, the local CBS channel said that they would come to the farbrengen. I was a big elam there, and it was hard to get in and out of the farbrengens. But nevertheless, we got this reporter by the name of Lloyd Kramer. We got him into the farbrengen.
The Lubavitch community, where anniversaries like these are extremely important. So much so that last night's 30th, in New York at least, was
The next day, we recorded a clip. My father mentions the Rebbe, and if Rebbe wants, that the Rebbe can view it.
You had to be there. And fortunately, Lloyd Kramer was.
Thank you, Jim. Family.
To our surprise, Rebbe said yes, that he would like to see it. So we walked into the Rebbe's room with the monitor and the recorder.
For hours he spoke in Yiddish. They listened, and they listened, and they listened.
At least one person.
As soon as it finished, I went into the Maskir's office. My father comes in and he says, Rebbe wants you to come back into his room. Rebbe asked, Hast du mitgetanzt b'shas Maaseh? So I went something like with my head and shoulders as a yes or no, halfway. And then the Rebbe said, Stammel ist es sicher befreien der Zeit auf Tonnen wie in Jonem. B'shas was Tonnen wie in Jonem, so sie sehen, mittanzen, und nicht nur mittanzen auf je zu sein, sondern mittanzen mit einem Emes. From there, we turned out that we had a new job as far as a new tafkid to be involved with these things.
Was chazichere Sache, jeder Sache, was wird nischadisch beilom, nischale beilom. Weil sich in kol cholisch tachas Hashemish, nur veden, es mewart auf den Zman, wenn das wird nischale, hakol osa yofa beite, ist auch das chazichere Sache, alle chevle reish, ist das zu lieb die Union im Team Shibazeh.
How can we get the Rebbe's focus on my own? How do you get the Rebbe's message out? I figure the best way you can do it is get it, the Mayan itself, just bring it out to the masses. I'm thinking, there's cable television, there's a satellite. So from the roof of 770, we were able to see the Empire State Building. So we were able to arrange to get access to a window in the Empire State Building. And then we were able to give them a cable feed, and that cable feed will be able to go out for the uplink in New Jersey.
So they put this huge dish up on the roof of 770, like 12 foot in diameter or something. And then this truck would pull up, a semi-trailer, full of equipment, and became the office, the control center.
This is Eyewitness News with the Eyewitness News team.
Satellite communication is now used widely, even to broadcast religious services like the one Peter Bannon attended tonight in Brooklyn.
The Rebbe spoke in Yiddish, and they needed somebody to translate for the satellite. So it ended up being my job.
Teichen of the Sikhs were very different than the farbrengens that weren't broadcast. The Rebbe usually took the opportunity to talk to the masses. If it was about a moment of silence, or if it was about the Shabbat mitzvahs, the Rebbe would always dedicate a certain amount of time of the farbrengen to talk to this audience.
To master the earthiness and the worldliness and turn this into a country that is consistent with the motto engraved on its currency, and that is that we not only believe in God, but actually trust in God. We rely on God completely to run the country properly by conducting ourselves in accordance with the 7 Noachide commandments and all the branches.
We would broadcast every big game of the Paga, which basically 6 times a year. The Rebbe always wanted to do. And then usually before the farbrengen, when we wrote in about the farbrengen that we were broadcasting as for bracha, we would send it out every single time. Have a pale mamish with a question mark. So one of the things that we did was we decided we put in telephones. We took a big room upstairs and 784 means on the 2nd floor. We made a telephone bank of 20 telephones, and then we put up the phone number across the screen. And as soon as we put up the screen, all 20 phones rang at the same time. There's stacks of papers from people that called, given names, given numbers. Well, this is a way of giving it a detailed report, showing the people that called, seeing the comments.
Beschaßen ist Galle geworden an Möglichkeit. Aber der erste Show, die kommen sich verbinden von einer, bis in der Hacke-Table, bis auf viele Napina Nidachas, auf viele Echid in Napina Nidachas, in Ruchnisoinionin, was mit Zaderu, was Herzog zu, Nese Sibachetiye, ist der Weile. Und der Hashgoch Plotis, Ettenteru, den Machschil, durch welchen der Herr, der Herte, wegen der Linie von der Sefer Telo.
Joe Papp, the Broadway producer, became very niscar to the Rebbe through this.
Tuning in one night, late at night, to a cable station, and I came upon what looked like 2,000 men wearing hats, black hats, and boys, and singing their hearts out, and beautifully singing. Then this extraordinary man with his beard comes on, speaking in Yiddish, and I listened to him, beautifully translated, for 4 hours. I was very much taken by it, and the spiritual exuberance of it was very, very moving, and it sort of put me very much back into touch with my roots. I was raised as an Orthodox Jew, but I had not had this kind of an experience.
Beautiful beginning. You learned the marvelous lesson by your speech today. I hope you not realize the lesson in action. I only believe in action. Thank you.
When we started, I didn't understand the scope of what we were starting, how important it would be to have the videos. I do believe, one that I would turn to the camera people, that the Rebbe was referring to, not just the camera people, not just us that were in the control room, but the future generations that would be watching it.
Forget for a moment about you professional Simachayim is all around.
This production is made possible through the generosity of the members of the GEM Foundation.
Der jüdische Beteiligung, was der Rebbe gegeben in Asami Nation, als Teile soll davon ankommen, Leber Shamayim hi, nur darf ki beoretz, soll sie davon ankommen, qua Jochel zu Abosser, was soll sich mischtadel sein, at der Eser von Kammer wie Kammer, aber soll Mamschir sein, die Schalscheles Hazor, was zieht sich von Kammer wie Kammer Deiris, durchtragen die Torah mit alle Protim Shebedava, Halachas Kammer wie Kammer der Klau Shebedava, als am meiste Hua Yicher, als soll sein der Limud der Torah der meiste Bepeir, und soll sein der
Is that it? Is it over? I guess so.